Hello, grade 9 students. In this video, we're going to talk about the midterm exam review worksheet for semester 2. Question number 1, talking about the treatment of anemia by EPO. In the text, first of all, you have to read it carefully. Most of the information you need is found inside the text. Whenever they ask for pick out from the text, you have to read the text carefully and you have to pick out. You don't have to copy the text. They said that anemia is characterized by low count of red blood cells and or low amount of hemoglobin in blood. It might be due to a deficiency in iron intake. Also, it might be due to decrease in the substance which is called the erythropoietin, EPO. Be careful about EPO. This is produced by the kidneys. This substance is indispensable for the production of the red blood cells, meaning that it's important for the production of the red blood cells. They said pick out from the text the characteristics of anemia. It's already found in the text. It's characterized by low count of red blood cells and or low amount of hemoglobin in blood. That's it. Role of the kidney. What is the role of the kidney? They said that the EPO is produced by the kidneys. So before we move to the 1.3, let's talk about 1.2. Role of the EPO. EPO, it's a substance that is responsible or it's indispensable for the production of the red blood cells. This is the EPO. 1.3, the role of the kidney. It produces the EPO. It's produced by the kidney. So the kidneys produce the erythropoietin. Part 2, they ask for explain why an anemic person always feels tired. As you know that the oxygen gas is indispensable for the cellular oxidation reaction. This oxidation reaction is responsible for the production of energy that's used in the daily activity and the cellular activities. So these anemic persons, they suffer from deficiency in the red blood cells. And as you know, these red blood cells, they are responsible for the transportation of the oxygen gas. So less oxygen will diffuse toward the cells, meaning that less energy produced, and this will lead to the tiredness or the fatigue that the anemic person always suffer from. A study was carried out on anemic person treated by EPO, by the erythropoietin, and the results are shown in the adjacent document. They said analyze. So whenever we have analysis, you have to say increase or decrease. So under the effect of erythropoietin, the number of red blood cells as shown in AU, arbitrary unit, increases from 12 AU, where we have a severe anemia, from March till July, which increased about till 73 AU upon the treatment with the EPO. So what can we conclude here? That the EPO has an important role in the production of the red blood cells, meaning that it favors the production of the red blood cells. Let's move now to question 2. As it said in document 1, cellulose is a carbohydrate. It's composed of glucose molecules. It's found in food of plant origin. However, it's not digested in the human digestive tract due to the absence of the enzyme cellulase. Cellulose, it facilitates the movement of the food through the large intestine. Pick out from document 1, here repeat, pick out the name of the molecule that constitutes cellulose. So cellulose is composed of glucose molecules. So it's composed of glucose. So simply you can say glucose. Part B, the reason why cellulose is not digested. Cellulose is not digested in the human digestive tract. It's due to what? To the absence of the cellulase enzyme. So in order to verify the effect of the cellulose on the activity of the large intestine, so this is the aim of the experiment, to verify the effect of the cellulose on the activity of the large intestine. A study is performed on a group of healthy individuals of the same age, of the same mass, and having the same sex, whether males or females. A suitable technique is used to measure the peristaltic movement of the intestine in each individual of this group in three situations. Situation number one, they are fed food devoid of cellulose. Devoid of cellulose means that without cellulose. Situation two, fed with food poor in cellulose. And situation number three, they are fed with food rich in cellulose, meaning high amount of cellulose. The obtained results are shown in document 2. So here we have the three situations. Here we have food devoid of the cellulose. So the peristaltic movement was 10 AU. However, it increases to about 20 AU where the food is poor in cellulose, and it increases sharply to about 45 AU where the food is rich in cellulose. These are deduced based on your performed study, whose results are shown in document 2, the effect of the cellulose on the intestinal activity. As you know, the peristaltic movement of the intestine were the released at 10 AU in the group of situation number 1 that are fed with food of poor, or they are devoid even of cellulose. However, it increases to 20 and 45 where the food in 20 was poor in cellulose and here it was rich in cellulose. And this explains that the cellulose has a role in facilitating or enhancing the intestinal movement, which are the peristaltic movements. Sammy suffers from constipation. The doctor advises him to eat more fruits and vegetables. Why? Justify based on what precedes the doctor's advice. So as you know, fruits and vegetables, they are food of plant origin, meaning that they contain cellulose. So this cellulose, they can increase the peristaltic movement of the intestine and thus can solve the problem of Sammy, which is the constipation. Let's move now to question 3, passive smoking. Passive smoking is when someone involuntarily inhales cigarette smoke produced by neighboring smokers. Each year, about 3,000 to 6,000 non-smokers they die due to passive smoking. They said, pick out from the text the definition of the passive smoking. Passive smoking, it's already found here. It's when someone involuntarily inhales cigarette smoke produced by neighboring smokers. The adjacent document, which is this document, it represents the frequency of the respiratory troubles in two groups of non-smokers. Group A, not exposed to cigarette smoke for a long period of time in their environment, and Group B, they are exposed to cigarette. Here, Group A, the one in black, and in white, Group B, that are exposed to cigarette. They said, draw a table that shows the variation in the frequency of different respiratory travels in both groups A and B. So you have to draw a table. You have to put on the top the one is found down. You have to put coughing and chronic bronchitis. You have to put groups A and B and the frequency of each. Justify the following statement: inhibition of smoking in closed area is a major action that protects the non-smokers. Why? Because as you see here, the case of group A, the frequency of the respiratory travels was about 7 in the case of coughing. However, it was 10.5 among the smokers, while it was 4.8 frequency for the chronic bronchitis, which is about 7 in the case of group B, which are exposed to cigarette. So according to this, the frequency of coughing is 10.5 in the individual that are exposed to smoking, which is higher than that in the case of non-smoker, which was 7. And the chronic bronchitis, it was about 7, which is greater than that in the case of group A, not exposed to smoking, which was 4.8. So this means that passive smoking, it favors the development of the respiratory troubles such as coughing and chronic bronchitis. So that's why it should be inhibited in the closed areas. So you have to explain this according to this document and according to the values that are found here by comparing in the case of non-smokers and exposed to smoke. Here we go to question number 4, respiratory gas exchange. The exchange of oxygen gas O2 and carbon dioxide CO2. It takes place between the alveolar air and the blood. The document below, it represents the percentage of oxygen gas and carbon dioxide in the inhaled and that in the exhaled, as well as this is in the inhaled air and the exhaled air, as well as in the blood entering the lungs and the blood leaving the lungs. They said pick out from the adjacent document the color of the blood entering the lungs. It's already mentioned in the figure. Blood entering the lungs, it has dark red color. However, that leaving the lungs, it's written here bright red in color. They said the color of the blood entering and the color of the blood leaving in parts 1.1 and 1.2. Part 2.1, they said compare. Whenever we talk about compare, we are talking about greater than or less than. Or whenever they say analyze, you are going to talk about increase or decrease. Compare the composition of inhaled air to that of the exhaled air in oxygen and carbon dioxide. Pay attention here. Inhaled and exhaled regarding oxygen and carbon dioxide. So you have to compare oxygen gas in the inhaled with oxygen gas in the exhaled. Not oxygen with carbon dioxide. Oxygen with oxygen. So in the inhaled air, the percentage of oxygen in the inhaled air was what? It was 21%, which is greater than that in the exhaled air, which is 16. However, the percentage of carbon dioxide in the inhaled air was 0.03%, which is less than that in the exhaled air, which is about 5%. So do you see? 21% greater than that in the exhaled, which is 16 for the oxygen. 0.03 is less than that in the carbon dioxide. So here, what do you conclude? You have to know that the level of the lungs, the alveolar air, will be rich in CO2 and will be poor in the oxygen. Whenever they leave, they took all the oxygen and they consumed the oxygen. Part 3, they said show by referring to the adjacent document that the blood leaving the lungs is enriched in oxygen gas and impoverished in carbon dioxide, meaning that blood leaving the lungs will be enriched with oxygen and impoverished with carbon dioxide, meaning that it's poor in carbon dioxide. Also here, we have to use the comparison. The blood entering the lungs, the percentage of oxygen gas was 14%, which is less than that in the blood leaving the lungs, which is 20%. However, the percentage of carbon dioxide in the blood entering the lungs was 54%, which is less than that in the carbon dioxide in the blood leaving. Sure, no, it's going to be greater than 54 and 50. So here you know that the blood leaving the lungs will be impoverished to carbon dioxide and will be enriched with O2, with oxygen. So draw out the direction of the passage of the oxygen gas and that of carbon dioxide at the level of the alveoli. You have to know that at the level of the alveoli, oxygen gas, it passes from the alveolar air into the blood, and carbon dioxide moves from the blood into the alveolar air. And here we did the comparison between these two. Intestinal functions. In the framework of studying one of the functions of the small intestine, the quantity of nutrients is measured in this organ as well as in the blood leaving the small intestine after a meal. The results are shown in the adjacent document. They said convert the graph into a table. So always the one found in the x-axis will be the upper part of the table, and you have to put the quantity of nutrients in the blood leaving and the quantity of nutrients in the small intestine. They said analyze. So what do you have to do? Let's see here in the graph. At time 0 or time 1, the quantity of the nutrients in the small intestine, it was 90. And as time increases from T1 till T4, it decreases from 90 till about 2. However, in the blood leaving the small intestine, The quantity of the nutrients at time 1 was 10 and it decreases at times move to 24 to become approximately 98 AU. So here you have to analyze. So as the quantity at time 1, first, the quantity of the nutrients in the small intestine was 90, which is greater than that at the level of the blood leaving the small intestine, which is 10 AU. Then, as the time increases, the quantity decreases from 90 till about 2 AU, while that in the blood leaving the small intestine increases from 10 to about 98 during the same duration from T1 to T4. So what can you conclude concerning the function of the intestine revealed in this document? You have to know that it's called the intestinal absorption, that we know this according to our acquired knowledge. Part 3 indicate another function ensured by the small intestine. We have small intestine, as you know, it has chemical digestion by the help of the juices, trypsin, and others. We have mechanical digestion like the peristaltic movement, and also it has the mechanical digestion role, or the passage of the food or the movement of the food according to the peristaltic movement. This said, list the characteristics. These are according to your acquired knowledge of the surface of exchange of the small intestine. You have to say that it has a thin wall of intestinal cells, highly vascularized, and it has large surface area of exchange. And by this way, we can finish this exercise according to the document. Already I know this phenomena, which is the intestinal absorption of nutrients. Already I know other function of the small intestine like absorption of the nutrients. This is already we said it. Chemical digestion by the food by the help of the juices, mechanical, and you have peristaltic movement. Let's move now to question number 6, which is the last question in this exam review worksheet. Transport of the respiratory gases. In 1 liter of blood, more than 98% of oxygen gas is transported by red blood cells or erythrocytes, and the remaining 2% of the oxygen gas is dissolved in the form of plasma. As for carbon dioxide, 70% of this gas is transported by elements of the plasma, and the remaining 30% is transported by red blood cells. Hemoglobin, the main constituent of the red blood cells, has the property of binding rapidly or combining rapidly and in a reversible manner. Both manners, in reversible in opposite direction with O2 gas or CO2. This I pick out from the text. The property that makes hemoglobin the essential transporter of oxygen gas. Why? Because it has the ability of binding, or has the property of binding rapidly in a reversible manner of oxygen with oxygen and carbon dioxide. What is the name of the constituent of the blood where hemoglobin is present? It's the main constituent of what? Of the red blood cells. Part A and B, they are done. Part 2, indicate the constituents of the blood that ensure essentially the transport of carbon dioxide. Justify your answer. Those that ensure the transport of the essentially the transport of the carbon dioxide, it's the elements of the plasma, since 70% of this gas is transported by the plasma and the remaining 30% they are transported by the red blood cells. Here we have part 3. They ask you to write the chemical reaction combination with hemoglobin and oxygen gas. So hemoglobin plus oxygen, it gives oxyhemoglobin. They ask for the chemical, so you have to know that Hb plus 4O2, it gives opposite direction, it gives what? HBO8 oxyhemoglobin. This is when the medium is rich, and here poor medium in oxygen gas. So they want the chemical equation. You have to write overall chemical. If they ask for the word, you have to write it as hemoglobin plus 4 oxygen gives oxyhemoglobin. And here you have to pay attention to the reactions and you have to review them. Thank you. Bye bye.